It's a corner kick for the opposing team. You dive in to knock the ball away from your goal with your head, and the next thing you see is darkness. You come to and you taste salt, almost blood in your mouth. Your nose is clogged and you can't breathe, and your teeth hurt. You don't know where you are, and you don't know what just happened. Well, what just happened is you had a head injury. Concussions and many other head injuries lead to the brain becoming damaged, but how long will that damage last? Unfortunately, sometimes it's forever, and in those cases, there is generally a disease called CTE. CTE is the acronym short for chronic traumatic encephalopathy, and unfortunately, it is one example of a recurring issue that persists as a result of TBIs, TBIs being short for traumatic brain injuries. CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, is a common and life threatening protein that builds up on the brain and comes as a result of untreated repetitive head injuries. The professional field is not educated enough in head injuries in order to be able to deal with them themselves. They need the help of doctors and medical professionals. The sport, especially in the NFL, football, is held at not only a high level, but a high aggression level. And as a result, head injuries occur all the time. CTE is a result of repetitive head injuries. And most times, those head injuries are repetitive and untreated or treated improperly. What occurs when an individual experiences multiple head injuries is a protein builds up on the outside of the brain, and this protein is called tau, spelled T-A-U. This protein is what causes all of the ailments and all the negative effects of what CTE causes for an individual. CTE can make an individual's mental health deteriorate rapidly, whether they develop mental illnesses such as schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, or any of those similar personality disorders. Most common, depression and aggression increase in those individuals. As a result, many times those individuals who have developed CTE as a result of their professional careers end up dying or committing suicide at a younger age. Just to go to show the lack thereof of care for these professional players and the repetitive and how common these injuries are for these players, in a study conducted and written about on New York Times by Joe Ward, there were a sample of 111 professional NFL athletes whose brains were donated and used for scientific research. Of those 111 brains, 110 of them had built up the tau protein and were diagnosable with CTE. The thing about CTE is that it can only be diagnosed post-mortem. That means that after the person is dead, based off of the analysis of the brain can then be determined whether or not it has CTE. Unfortunately, before death, it is undiagnosable and not currently treatable effectively. The result of all these head injuries and lack of treatment becomes this terrible thing, this CTE, that takes so many lives, whether it be via suicide, via early death as a result of things such as Alzheimer's and other diseases that affect the brain and the cognitive ability of one person. These people not only lose themselves before their death, but they never had the chance to truly enjoy who they once were. Tau proteins build up on the brain as shown via these scans here from Anne McKee's research on the concussionfoundation.org. CTE, although it can show up on these scans, can only show up after death, as the only chemical agent that functions to show these proteins in the brain is in fact toxic for a human when they are alive. The NFL needs to provide better and more patient methods as to help with head injuries. Chronic traumatic encephalopathy has taken the lives of far too many professional athletes for it to not be talked about. All that needs to be spread is awareness. Awareness and focus on one's self-care will not only alleviate many of these issues, but also alleviate the tension on those families dealing with their loved ones who have to battle chronic traumatic encephalopathy.